Hello and welcome to Under Common Taste. This is a podcast where we create and discuss homebrew content for tabletop RPGs.
You can't expect a demigod to be a decapod. Look it up, because I'm shiny!
I'm Ian Woodworth. I'm joined by my co-host James Daly, and today we are going into part 2 of our episode on dragons.
He smiled, you could hear it in his voice.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about metallic dragons.
Huzzah.
So the 5 standard metallic dragons.
Yes.
Brass, bronze, copper, gold, and silver.
If you have a hard time remembering what they are, really they're just the precious and the semi-precious metals, with the exception of platinum.
Yeah, that's because Bahamut is the platinum dragon.
Is Bahamut the platinum dragon?
Bahamut is the platinum dragon.
Okay, so Bahamut is Fizbin. I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Fizbin is Bahamut.
Okay. I was unaware of that. That's kind of awesome.
Yes.
Because he goes by
true.
other names too. It's like Palladian or whatever. But yeah, I like it. I just like Fizbin.
Yeah, and the character of Fizbin will come up near the end of this episode. And I've structured this to where hopefully we go a little bit quicker today than we did last time, because I did not intend for us to have a 90-minute episode when we were talking about chromatic dragons.
Challenge accepted.
So I've tried to condense it a little bit,
Fair.
but still get some of the good content going. But before we actually get into the metallic dragons, I do want to take a minute at the beginning of these episodes to talk about something about dragons in general. You know, like how at the beginning of the chromatic episode we talked a bit about the dragon gods. This time I want to talk a little bit about the physicality of dragons and how they are inherently magical creatures and what that entails from a world building aspect.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Because, I mean, a dragon's going to have a presence. If there is a dragon in your world, there is much like, you have people and creatures with high charisma scores and they have a presence. A dragon's going to have a presence. You're going to know when they're in the room.
Absolutely. I mean, this comes into the fact that all of these dragons, once they reach a certain age in the 5th edition rule set, they end up having regional effects. The areas around their lair are fundamentally altered because of their presence. And if we are adhering to the mythos that is put forth in 5th edition in the front of Fizbin's Guide to Dragons with the Elegy for the First World, dragons are literally the physical manifestations of creation magic in the material plane.
Right. Again, we reference him a lot. I like how Jim Butcher, discusses dragons and how, they have enough power, they have enough energy within themselves, they can unmake creation if they exert their will too much. And so, they live restrained and balanced in our world to exist within our world.
Exactly, yeah, because basically they are entities powerful enough to where if they decided that the world needed to end, they could just end it.
Yes. Shake that Etch-a-Sketch.
Yeah, in a very literal sense. But from that perspective, given the contents of the Elegy for the First World, the dragons would have a hard time doing it now in the D&D cosmos as it exists because the gods are here now.
Yeah. And
the gods have a vested interest in creation not going away.
Fair. But that was one of the things brought up in the Dragonlance, particularly in the Time of the Twins trilogy, is that the dragons are also gods themselves. And so I'm trying to think, was it 2nd edition or 3rd edition that had the war between the gods?
That was, if you're talking about the Time of Troubles, yeah, that was near the end of 2nd edition.
Yeah, so I mean, it would have to be something like that to scrub the dragons out or to erase dragons. It would literally be all of the gods throwing in. For more closer to Greek myth, it would be something like the gods versus the titans, where it would be these massive power players kind of throwing in one side or the other. But it would take that kind of force.
Yeah, if we were to go Norse mythology as opposed to Greek and Roman, this would be Ragnarok.
Yeah, absolutely.
The gods versus the dragons would be the gods versus the Jotun.
Yeah.
And if we were to revisit that scenario that we came up with the Cult of the Dragon freeing Tiamat from her prison specifically to kill the gods, this would be the climax of that campaign.
Yes.
It would be the forces aligned with the dragons who are trying to reset creation and, kick these divine interlopers out of their creation versus the gods who are now here and ingrained and have a vested interest in the material plane continuing to exist.
Okay, I like this. And bear with me, this is going to be Hellenistic focused, so Greek-Roman focused. Okay, so we're developing this gods versus the dragons. We also know the giants and the giant kin are a well-known enemy of dragons. They have that feud from wherever. I don't know where that feud starts, but it's there. So going through, if you wanted to build a world, and again, go very Greek-Roman focused, imagine the gods and titans teaming up to fight the dragons. I think that could be an amazing storyline.
Yeah. And honestly, given the headcanon that I have said before with how I think that the ruby rod that Asmodeus wields is a fragment of Sardior, the ruby dragon.
Right.
I would love to see that because of that, the devils side with the dragons.
Oh, yes. Okay. Nice.
Because Tiamat needs to restore Sardior.
Okay.
In order to facilitate this reset, because Sardior was the first creation of Bahamut and Tiamat, and Sardior was critical in the creation of the dragons. The dragons themselves would not exist without Sardior. And so Sardior is this critical linchpin, but Tiamat just does not have the power to fight Asmodeus for it. And given that in one of the other second edition Planescape things, Asmodeus used to be one of the two serpents, the Ouroboros serpents, that encircled the Great Wheel.
Yes.
And I can't remember who the other one is. They are currently in Mount Celestia.
It's basically like Nidhogg. I know that's Norse, but...
Kind of is a winged serpent.
Okay. It's a Coatl?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of.
Okay.
I can't remember if it's actually a Coatl or if it's just like a Coatl.
Okay.
But yes, technically Asmodeus is one of those.
Oh, nice.
And it is assumed that Asmodeus's actual body lies in the layer below the layer that he is on, which is considered the bottom of the hells.
Okay. He's right? In the sub-basement?
Yeah, because he got cast out,
right.
And he just kept going. I mean, the hole that runs down through the center of the 9 hells is the result of him falling through the hells on his way down.
It's his body crater. But
yes.
I like this too. So obviously, if we're going to bring in the devils on the side of Tiamat, I'm going to throw in, we need the demons being led by Pan. And we can totally drag the Blood War into this too, because just extra reason for them to fight.
Well, see, because they are chaotic evil, I don't think that the demons are actually going to fall in with anybody.
Okay.
They're going to be opportunistic. They're just going to attack whoever happens to be there. They are the wild card that just goes and thwarts everybody's well-laid plans.
Okay, I like that too. Just a pure chaos. Okay, I'm adding this to the list of things we need to draw up.
And then, the faction that is going to make or break it for either side is the Yugoloths.
Yes.
Because they are mercenary by nature.
Yep.
And so they may or may not
pick a side.
Go to the side of the devils that have, retained their services in the past.
Yeah, I definitely want to do an epic level campaign. Level 18, 19, 20. Oh, that'd be so fun. Oh my god, that would be such a great, just huge titans of myth on the map and just spells everywhere, shaping the world around you. And that could be the end game of the entire campaign or the session is like, how do your actions shape what's ultimately going to become the new world? Because this is definitely going to reshape the world.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I love it.
Even if the gods are successful and are able to either destroy or subjugate the dragons, the amount of carnage across the cosmos
yes.
as a result of this war would be nothing short of a calamity.
Yeah.
It would completely rewrite pantheons. It would restructure entire hierarchies of gods.
This would be where we introduce 6th edition.
More or less. Yeah, I mean, the landscape would be cataclysmically changed.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it would be something substantial. It would be like a Ragnarok.
Yeah, it would be. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm going to have to... I definitely need to stick a pin in that one. Because, that would be just... Yeah. Okay, anyway.
Anyway, getting back to the point that we started
I told you, challenge accepted.
I mean, I appreciate the tangent that we went on, because that was a great creative tangent, and I loved it. But one of the points that I was wanting to get to is that because dragons are considered the physical manifestations of magic here on the material plane, they don't necessarily have to follow all the same rules as other physical creatures. Felix, a creator I follow on TikTok, I'm pretty sure he lives in Tasmania. He has some absolutely amazing content. If you haven't watched any of his stuff, you really need to. I'm going to try and include a link to the particular video that I'm about to reference in the show notes. But he recently, at time of recording, made a video about world building. And one of the things that he mentioned in his video is that because some creatures are inherently magical, their bodies are, at least in part, also magical and not wholly physical.
Okay.
And the point that he was getting to in his video was that is why we cannot find conclusive proof, like fossil record proof of these things existing. Because when they die, the magic dissipates and their bodies disintegrate.
Okay, so they basically like Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Kind of. One of the examples that he gave was like with a werewolf. If a werewolf is still in their fully human form, whenever they die, they stay as looking like a person. But if they're a werewolf when they die, because a werewolf ends up gaining all of this additional musculature and all this extra hair and all of these other, body features, that's all magic.
Okay.
And so if they die in their bestial form, all of the magic parts of them are going to start to slough off into this gray goop.
Okay, yeah, so it all dissipates. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because it would all be held together either by will or just the natural magical presence. And so, yeah, you pull the plug and it, it's like one of those wavy inflatable arm guys. They're huge until you cut the power. And they're just kind of a puddle. I like it.
Yep. And so this concept got me thinking about it with dragons, because it does potentially have some very interesting implications whenever we're talking about dragons. Because dragons, in their natural form, are giant winged lizards.
Okay.
But then they use magic to shift into a smaller form.
Right.
So rather than gaining as a result of magic, they are reducing as a result of magic.
So if they die in humanoid form, they're just going to plop out, like breaking a girdle?
I mean, if they die as a dragon, their body just lingers and decomposes like a body should.
Okay.
Right? But if they die as a humanoid, things could get really interesting. So there are a number of possible options. One, they might change back into a dragon when they die.
That would make sense.
Which, if they were in a particularly small space when that happens, that could have some pretty catastrophic results.
Okay.
Speaking of catastrophic results, they might just detonate in a sudden release of magic because they're no longer controlling that magic.
Giant exploding whales. I like it.
Yes. Just like that one video from when they tried to blow up that whale in the 70s on the beach.
Yeah.
And they
showered whale everywhere.
Yes. That had 40-pound chunks of whale falling out of the sky and crushing cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a well-thought endeavor.
No.
And it didn't even blow up all of the whale. They still had to go back out with excavators and stuff and try and dig it up and move it after they got done blowing it up. So maybe if they die in their humanoid form, the magic sort of rewinds them chronologically into a smaller state, possibly even going so far as to encapsulate them back into like a pseudo egg.
Oh, I like that one.
And resetting their life cycle.
Dragon reincarnation. That's fun. Oh, okay. So going back to our Dragon God War. Again, you can't necessarily kill the dragons without fully destroying creation reality. But if you could reset them and then capture the eggs, and that's the end goal for the gods and titans, is they want to revert the dragons back into a reincarnated pseudo-egg and capture them so the dragons, they're not dead, but they're like in a stasis.
Right.
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
And then they would be able to influence them as they rehatched and regrew, and they're able to shape their psyches in what would actually be a very sort of horror movie sort of way.
I've got one more step for you that you're going to love.
Okay.
Your Lancer class.
Well, I mean, the Dragoons...
Yeah, the Dragoon, yeah.
When I created the Dragoons from a story point of view, the whole story behind the creation of the Dragoons was that in the world that I was running at the time, the chromatic and metallic dragons were in a war with one another and they had hit a stalemate. And so the metallic dragons were literally sending people out to hunt down a chromatic dragon, steal all of the eggs from its clutch, and then bring them back, and they were hatching them themselves so that they would imprint on the metallic side of the war, basically. And these dragoons were individuals that these wormlings would imprint to upon hatching, and they were trying to basically win this war by attrition. They were relying on this thought experiment that perhaps this is a nurture, not nature reason for them being evil.
Right. So I'm taking this two different ways. I'm taking one, there's no way dragons are above in fighting. The second way is maybe your dragoons were something from a distant past that there was some memory of. And so now the gods and titans are trying to take a page from the metallic dragons, and if they can, again, put them back to a pseudo-egg, then they can make them, grab them, and retrain the dragons to basically bend to their will and become subservient.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ooh, I like it. And then, okay, I'm sorry. I had caffeine today, and I've got a bajillion different rabbit trails with your head, but also talking about if a dragon dies in humanoid form or a smaller form, that release of energy, absolutely spontaneous human combustion. That explains it.
Yeah.
Any news story of spontaneous, that was a dragon.
Yep. And the last idea that I had for this was that perhaps if they die in a humanoid form, all of that magical essence is sort of condensed down into this like physical state.
Okay.
You know, sort of like a dragon stone.
Ooh.
Almost like a gem heart.
Okay.
Kinda, to draw from Stormlight Archives.
Okay. I could see tons of mage guilds like hoarding these things as much. It would be, you have the Bezoars, which are more mythical, but almost like the ambergris from the whales, where it's like this fabled, like highly valuable thing. When you find it, it's like, oh my god, I've got this.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah. And then another particular thought experiment about how if they are magical beings and not wholly physical, it would explain a lot about how their bodies actually work. You know, referring back to the 3rd edition Draconomicon, they went through a whole spiel with diagrams and everything describing how a dragon's eye works.
Right.
Apparently they have like a second iris inside of their eyeball.
Okay.
That they're able to move independently of the whole eyeball.
Interesting.
Which allows them to focus on specific tiny areas. Basically like little telescopic vision.
Okay.
Almost. And that the inside of their eyeball has a special reflective lining, which is how they're able to see so well in low light situations, and why whenever you have a dragon look at you in the dark, their eyes glow.
Okay, I like that. So it's kind of like...
because their eyes are collecting and concentrating what little bit of light is in there.
I like it.
And so what you're seeing is basically just the light bouncing all over the place inside their eyeball.
Okay, I like that.
But I would say that it makes it much more interesting situation if we were to take this to the next logical step of them being magical creatures, specifically magical creatures that have an innate connection to the material plane, that they are part of the creative magics of the material plane.
Right.
So they might just have an innate connection to the plane.
Yeah.
So that they're just aware of what's around them. Sort of like how birds can sense magnetic poles.
I like that. No, that makes a lot of sense. I was actually going to come in and I had seen this in your notes and it had sparked another idea. And again, I'm all over the place with ideas today. But what if dragons, and this would actually help if we wanted to go more system agnostic as well and not focus so much on D&D, but if you want to do like Monster of the Week, what if the dragons are literally extra dimensional creatures? And so they're existing in both realms at once. So like they are simultaneously living in the material plane as well as whatever other plane they're attached to. And they are present both at the same time. And it'd be like a 4-dimensional object in a 3D space or a 3-dimensional object in a 2D space. And so with that, they can also be in multiple places in that 3-dimensional space at the same time because of the way, dimensional space works. But they do have that connection. And if they were to die in that form, that could be part of that leeching or moving of magic. Perhaps, the death or the severe wounding of a dragon creates a portal to those other planes.
Potentially.
Yeah. And again, too, having that kind of causing a ripple in that plane, those ripples are how they're going to have that sense of the material plane around them. So like you said, much like a bird can sense electric fields, or like a fish, if you throw a pebble, they're going to feel the pressure of those waves because they're in it.
Yeah. So another thing that it got me thinking about with this was the anatomy of their breath weapon.
Okay.
So they might have some sort of bizarre anatomy that allows them to generate their breath weapons, like a sac that has some sort of chemical reaction going on in it. Or they might just be able to tap into the natural forces that they are manifestations of and just project that energy.
I prefer that one. That one feels more dragon-like to me. And I mean, I know people have tried to explain, like I said, like the sacs and, you have a poison sac or an oxidizing gas sac. These are magical they create. It's a magical breath weapon from magic. It is a pure essence of will that they create these out of. I like that better.
Yeah. And another thing that it got me thinking about was their diet.
Okay.
Because dragons, especially the adults, are very big carnivores, typically. And as such, they require a huge number of calories to survive.
Hungry hippos.
Exactly. So this could be the reason why dragons older than a certain age even attempt to take on humanoid forms.
Okay.
Because a human can thrive on 2,000 calories a day. An ancient dragon, given the numbers in the Draconomicon, let us assume that our average human is 160 pounds.
Okay.
Let's just assume that. An ancient dragon tends to be about 1,000 times the mass of that.
Yeah.
It tends to be right around 160,000 pounds.
Okay.
So if it scales linearly, body mass to caloric needs.
And I would say it wouldn't, just because of magical prowess and size.
Yeah, but we're just, for this thought experiment, we're going to say that it is a linear scaling.
Okay, just to keep numbers easy.
Just to keep numbers easy. They would need about 2 million calories a day.
Okay, so they eat as much as I do.
So this would still be feasible. It would be a little expensive, but it would still be feasible. Because depending on how you calculate it, an adult cow has between 750,000 and 1.1 million calories in their body.
Okay.
As far as I can tell from what I was reading, whether you're calculating off of just the meat, just the muscle tissue on the cow, or everything that is edible.
The whole cow, yeah.
And since the dragon would probably be eating the whole cow, it's probably closer to the 1 million calories. So you're talking about 2 to 3 cows a day.
So bringing in a little bit of science with this, you're actually looking significantly more than that, because when you consume stuff just off base metabolism, you're looking to reduce your caloric intake about 85 to 90% when you eat something. So like if you ate something, like if you ate a plant that contained 100 calories, you're only getting 10 to 15 calories out of that. Now again, to magical dragons, let's say they have like a perfectly efficient metabolism. Yeah, you're still needing a cow a day, but if you have any kind of inefficiency with that metabolism, like any kind of natural creature, you're needing to eat probably 10 to 100 cattle a day. But yeah.
Yeah. But if this is the case, then a dragon could eat a cow,
Take a nap.
Take a nap and digest, shape change back into a human, and have sufficient caloric reserves to last them a very long time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, if it was perfectly efficient, if you didn't lose a whole bunch of calories just in the act of digesting and all of that, you'd be looking at enough calories to survive as a humanoid for a year or more.
Okay.
But this would also explain why they tend to go dormant so often. You know, you would see all of these stories about these old dragons that they only come out of their lairs every 20, 40 years, and they create this huge swath of terror. It's usually a red dragon that does this in the stories. They create this huge swath of terror and destruction, and they gorge themselves, and then they go back to their lairs, and they go back to sleep.
Yeah, they're not sleeping, they're just in human form.
Yeah, well, and they would probably be resting in their lairs in their human forms.
Yeah.
Because it would take them so much longer before they needed to go out hunting again.
That makes sense.
So they would gorge themselves to stockpile calories, then they would return to their lair and sleep, kind of like a hibernating bear.
Okay, I like it.
And if we tie back in the connection of magic, that the material plane is providing them this connection that they have, they would probably be able to sense any intrusion into their lair by other creatures like adventurers.
Yes.
And potentially would shapeshift back into their draconic forms purely on impulse.
Okay.
Like an involuntary response, an evolutionary survival trait.
Okay.
So like they're transforming in their sleep. It is not a conscious decision. Their senses are detecting that there is a threat, and they are going into threat mitigation mode.
I like it.
And that's why, you know, all of these encounters that you see in all of the media, whenever you go into a dragon's lair, if you find the dragon sleeping on their hoard, they are a dragon. They're not a person.
No, I like that. I'm thinking with this too, again, going back to our God Titan Dragon War, I could see this as a selling point to get people on the sides of the Gods and Titans as they're explaining this and saying that the dragons, because they're not coming out and eating all the time, that they're using the magic of creation and of the world to sustain themselves, because it's the only way they could, and therefore it is drawing that energy, that either magical or life energy, off of the world. And so just the existence of the dragon is going to corrupt, poison, and kill the world, and that's why they're going to get these people to go after this dragon that's just sleeping in its cave or its lair doing whatever, because they have convinced the people that its very existence is sapping the energy of creation from the area.
Oh, absolutely. That is absolutely a propaganda tack that they're going to take.
Oh, we got to write this down.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the main event now.
Dun, dun, dun,
now
dun.
that we have once again gone 30 minutes rambling about something other than our main topic for the day.
Oh, look, something shiny. It's a dragon.
So a couple of points on metallic dragons, just generally overarching. They do have a few commonalities per D&D lore. All metallic dragons are considered good aligned by default.
Yeah.
That's just where they're at. I have seen instances where we have non-good metallic dragons. There was a podcast that I used to listen to. It was actually the first actual play podcast I ever found, called Thursday Nights. And they did a one-shot game, one episode, where they had to break into this tower and solve a bunch of puzzles, and the end boss was an evil gold dragon.
Ooh, I like it.
Who was basically imprisoned in this tower because of his hubris.
Okay.
So yeah, the other dragons said, you need to...
You're on timeout. Go stick your nose in the corner.
Yeah. And so that was the overarching thing of that one shot, which was great. It was very well done. So one of the things where, chromatic dragons are generally portrayed as being these arrogant, antisocial, almost to the point of sociopathy, brutish dragons. Metallic dragons tend to be portrayed as more social and more or less civilized. They tend to interact with humanoids as benevolent beings rather than antagonistic ones.
Yeah, I'd probably be a chromatic dragon.
And at this point, I do want to take a minute because there were several words that I used initially when I was writing out my notes, and I typed it out and I thought about it and I deleted it and changed my word choice, because whenever you're talking about this dichotomy between the chromatic and metallic dragons, you get to a point where you start thinking about the dichotomy as in terms of like primitive versus civilized, or more or less evolved. And so whenever you get to that, it starts to feel almost like you're approaching the realm of eugenics, and I want to avoid that.
I get
for
that.
Obvious reasons, I hope.
Yeah, no, and again, that is a challenge of Western culture civilization, is that, again, going back to the old Hellenistic and Greek word barbarian, just meant you were non-Hellenistic. You didn't live in a city, but you were nomadic, you were in camps, you didn't have, firm roots. And that's, from 4,000 years ago to now, it still carries through. I think advanced, when you're dealing with social construct and technology, is correct. Primitive, meaning simpler technology or less technology. But talking about dragons, I like simple and complex, but yeah, no, I absolutely get the squick of the words.
But that still has that...
Yeah, it does.
That feel to it. Just going back off of the 19th century eugenicists talking about how the Irish and the Negro were less than the white man.
Yeah.
It's squicky. I don't like it.
Maybe primitive and developed. Primitive and... I don't know what the second word would be. But yeah, if you're talking something more bestial or less organized, less coherent, I need a thesaurus. That's what we need. We need a thesaurus.
That's something that we can work on later. So in terms of physiology, all 5 colors of chromatic dragons have the bat-like wings that you typically see in most depictions of Western European dragons.
So that makes them technically... No, the wyverns are if the wings are attached to the forelegs, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Wyverns technically have 2 legs and 2 arms with wings as part of them.
Okay, yeah.
Although that is a technicality. A dragon is anything that fulfills the role of a dragon. We talked about this last time.
We're not neurospicy at all. It's fine.
But more than half of the metallic dragons, so the brass, copper, and gold dragons, all have these manta-like wings. So they start off at the front the same as all of the rest, where it's this membrane that is across an arm-like structure like a bat wing would be. However, they sort of come in and wedge shape all the way down to the tail, and they have a series of semi-rigid spines that come out from the body and extend along to the edge of this membrane. So they get this sort of undulating look to them whenever they're flying.
Okay.
And it gives them this sort of triangular profile silhouette whenever they're flying. And then the last detail that is important, and this is one that I'm still not entirely sure why they did this. Maybe because metallic dragons have always been good aligned in D&D, and so they needed a way for metallic dragons to end conflict without just, incinerating the group of adventurers. So while chromatic dragons all have one type of breath weapon, metallic dragons all have 2.
Boo!
They have one that is a traditional elemental damage breath weapon, and one that does a status effect.
That's kind of fun, though. I like that part.
I mean, it's interesting. It gives you a little more variety to work with, more tools in your toolbox. But it plays into that whole, I don't want to call it evolution, that some are more advanced evolutionarily than others because they're all subspecies of dragon.
I could see, okay, if you are a supremely magical and intelligent creature, and you are living with humanoids, and they are the fun things, it'd be like visiting, an animal shelter full of kittens or puppies or whatever you want, They're obviously, intellectually and capability, they're beneath you, but they're funny, they're cute, they make sounds you like, and they generally make your day better. But every once in a while, one kind of gets uppity and tries to claw at you. You want a non-lethal way to deter it. And I'm thinking if you are a supremely magical creature, you would figure this out. And so maybe that's why it is where you're going to have the more antisocial chromatics where if this thing's approaching you, it's so far beneath you and you don't care, it should be punished and destroyed immediately. And so I wouldn't say this is a evolutionary thing, but maybe more of a mindset.
It's a plot point.
Yeah, fair. That too.
Anyway, so let's get into the actual dragons now.
Brass
now that we've
monkey.
been talking for 45 minutes.
The funky monkey. Oh, sorry.
So we're going to start off with brass dragons. Brass dragons prefer to live in deserts, and they have their 2 breath weapons, a fire breath and a sleep breath.
Sleepy deserts sound fun.
They are the smallest of the metallic dragons. They still grow to about the same length as adults at right around 85 feet, but they have a much narrower wingspan, only getting to about 60 feet, whereas the others are getting to the 80 to 90 foot range. Their preference for living in the desert often leads them into direct confrontation with blue dragons, because blue dragons also like living in the desert.
Desert's a good place to live.
For some people. I have no desire to live in a desert.
I miss the desert.
And they tend to deal with blue dragons simply by avoiding them, because blue dragons tend to be larger than brass dragons.
You pick your battles.
And in older editions, they had a higher fly and burrow speed than blue dragons because they were smaller. In 5th edition, they have the same movement speeds now. So it's a little bit less of a thing now. But in older editions, they would just use their superior speed and just run away whenever a blue dragon showed up. And the thing that brass dragons are famous or infamous for is their loquacity, their love of conversations. They just like talking.
Fair. They'd be great storytellers. Brass dragon bards.
They love to collect stories and information, and they are more than happy to exchange information for treasure.
Fair.
So if you find a brass dragon that knows the information that you are looking for and you can bring them something for their collection, they will trade that thing for the information.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. Brass dragons might be worth talking to.
They are generally trusting of others, at least on the surface, but they have enough social intelligence to realize when someone is trying to manipulate them. And when they catch on to someone trying to do that, rather than calling them out or, getting agitated about it, they shift the mode of their conversation to do the same, and they turn it into a game of wits to see who can convince the other one, who can manipulate the other one into doing what they want.
See, I like this. I think I could be friends with a brass dragon. I think it would be kind of fun to deal with.
I would constantly be doing favors for this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
My brain does not function quickly enough in a conversational setting to catch on to that fact that they are trying to convince me to do a thing because they want it done.
Right.
I mean, after the second or third time that it happens, I would wise up to it and I would be looking for that. But they would just shift up their tactics just a little bit and catch me again.
Exactly. But I mean, again,
I'm going to be completely honest about that.
This would be like having that great professor that just kind of like knows a little bit of everything. And it's like whenever you have a question, they've got the answer. And they might make you dance for it, or they might play with you a bit before you get that answer. But, it's always there. And they're always good for it. Yeah, like I said, I could totally see being friends with a brass dragon.
Yeah. So they prefer talking to fighting.
Okay.
Just generally speaking. And they go so far as to use their sleep breath or enchantment magic like the suggestion spell to diffuse hostile situations.
Nice.
In older editions, they had suggestion as just an at-will ability so many times a day.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever encountered this or not, but you get like those people and you're pissed at this person. You're going to go and you're going to tell them off. And if they give you that chance, yeah, you're going to throw hands. When you get there and they start chatting you up and you're talking with them and then like you laugh, they crack a joke or something, and you leave and you're like, hey, I was pissed at that person, but okay, I feel a little bit better. Wait, did he say something about my mom? And it's like everything just kind of slips right under the radar until after, and you're looking back, it's like, what the hell just happened?
Right. So with regards to the treasures that they hoard, this is another one where the preferred list of treasure shifted from 3rd edition to 5th edition.
Okay.
In 3rd edition, their preferred treasures were listed as organic items. So wooden objects, textiles, things of that nature, rather than metal and stone.
Well, that's a bad fit for the desert.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. Do better, wizards.
But in 5th edition, this was changed to magic items which allow for conversation. So whether that would be something like sending stones that let you talk to someone over long distances, or a sentient weapon that you can communicate with telepathically, or one of the examples that they gave was a magic lamp that is a djinn's prison.
Ooh.
You know, conversing with the djinn inside the lamp.
Do you know what this brass dragon would really love to have? A thesaurus.
And so some ideas that I came up with for brass dragons, one would be obviously an academic.
Yeah.
Something like a professor of history or anthropology or best of all philosophy.
Indiana Jones is a brass dragon.
Probably. Probably. It could be an antiquities dealer.
Ooh, nice.
You know, somebody who, if you've ever seen the show American Pickers.
Okay.
Where they just go and they find these places where somebody has just hordes of stuff.
Yes.
And they just go through and they chat with this person and they strike up, you know, just get to know you conversations. And they are able to talk these people into selling the items that they find that are worth stuff.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing I was thinking, like, if you're doing like a kids on bike or Powered by the Apocalypse, like, you'd have that antique dealer, and maybe they have, like, the original cuneiform tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh, or maybe they have, like, the Rosetta Stone. You know, just these ancient examples of literature and written word.
They have that chunk that's broken off the top of a Rosetta Stone.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's perfect, yes.
It's like, yeah, I meant to go back and get the rest of it, but I got distracted.
Yeah, I love it.
Another thing that they would be a perfect fit for would be like an ambassador or a diplomat.
Yeah.
Because they love to talk to people. They love to collect information.
Yeah.
They love to exchange information. And because of their desire for conversation, that would probably extend to a desire to learn other languages.
Absolutely. And I could see, like, a Master of Whispers absolutely wanting to have one of these as a friend, because, again, if you can get that thing for their treasure hoard, they're willing to give up information for treasure. And so, knowing what they want, so you can get to know what they know, I think that would be a really good point to play with as well.
And then the last one that I had was like a traveling salesman or caravan master.
Okay.
Simply because you're traveling, you're having conversations with people, you know, you're exchanging information and goods, and that puts them in a situation where they can find the things that they want for their hoard.
I like it.
All right, moving along. Next up are the bronze dragons. Bronze dragons are my personal favorite of the metallics, because they also have lightning breath. I just think lightning breath is cool.
Fair.
Silvers are a close second, but bronze dragons are my favorite. So they prefer to live in coastal areas, primarily saltwater coastal areas, and they have 2 breath weapons. They have a lightning breath, and they have a repulsion breath. So repulsion breath has changed over the editions. 5th edition repulsion breath is boring. It's literally just a knockback.
Oh, boo.
Yeah, it sucks. Instead, go with the older editions, the 2nd and 3rd edition, where it's basically a fear effect.
Okay.
So if you fail your saving throw against the repulsion breath, you spend your turn trying to get away from the dragon.
I like that. So this kind of reminds me of the best thing I accidentally ever taught my dogs. But I taught my dogs the command bubble. So, like, if they were trying to get too moochy with food, or if I was feeling anxious just because they're too close, because social anxiety is a total thing, I'd tell them bubble, And they would all very politely take 2 or 3 steps back and sit. And that was it. And I was like, holy crap, this is the best thing I've ever done a dog. But I could see a bronze dragon having a bubble, just bubble, and then you just sit, you step back, and you stay in place.
So they love sitting by the sea, living by the sea, watching the ships come and go. One thing that was mentioned, I think in the Draconomicon, it may have actually been the 5th edition Monster Manual. One of the things that they will do is they will shape change themselves into like a small bird or a rat and go aboard ships that are sailing by just to see what's on board, to see if there's anything that they might want.
I like it.
And if they find something that they want, then they will try to barter with the captain to get it.
Fair. I like it.
So it's B&E, but it's B&E light, because they don't actually take anything in the process.
I mean, as a rogue, that's how I feel. Like, I hate locked doors, and I want to open, and I don't necessarily want to take, now again, playing Neverwinter Nights, I absolutely loot all the gold. But just if there's a locked door, it bothers me it's locked, and I want to see what's behind it. And I might not necessarily take anything, but I want to know what's in there. I totally get that curiosity.
Absolutely, yeah. So, bronze dragons are one of the lawful good dragons.
Boo.
And so they have this very strong sense of justice. And they're very martial dragons. They're very combat-centric dragons. And so they use their might to sort of tackle the evil creatures that plague the oceans, things like Sahagin and Marrow. And they'll also target groups like pirates. But they also tend to have a very live and let live sort of interaction with these individuals, and also with like other dragons. So they tend to not kill things if they don't have to, especially if the thing that they're killing isn't food. So the way that they rationalize it is that stranding this pirate on an island or snapping the masts off of their ship and just leaving them adrift at sea, that serves the same function as killing them, but it doesn't actually kill them.
Fair.
Now with Sahagin and Marrow, they do just straight up kill those.
Well, I mean, they're monsters.
Because they're a menace. And they extend this live and let live approach to other dragons. Because where they live, they frequently come into close competition with black and green dragons. They are perfectly content to let a black dragon or a green dragon live next door. It tends to be the black and green dragons per D&D lore that have a problem with the bronze dragon there.
Yeah.
And they press the issue. And so the bronze dragon has to lay down the law.
As one does.
As one does. Yet, bronze dragons give big paladin vibes.
Ew.
In just their general temperament. So in older editions, this is another thing that has been lost from older editions, they also had the innate ability to read thoughts. So in 2nd edition, they had ESP as one of their at-will abilities. In 3rd edition, it became Detect Thoughts because the Detect Thoughts spell took the place of ESP.
Right.
They could conjure fog clouds and even control the weather when they got old enough.
That's kind of snazzy.
Yeah.
Especially, like, if it's on a ship for a captain, I could see, hey, I can get you to port a week faster with some good winds. If I could let me lighten your cargo a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Or if they spot
pirates,
some pirates lying in ambush on the other side of this island, and they want to make sure that this other ship that they're getting ready to ambush makes it safely through, they just drop a fog cloud on that pirate ship. That pirate isn't going to see anything.
Yeah, I could see that, or a very shaped and directed squall. So it gives enough wind for the ship passing by, but like it swamps out the ships laying in ambush.
Right. Well, they get access to fog cloud well before they get access to control weather.
Okay, fair.
Control weather is something that much older dragons have access to.
So there's like the greater worms.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's either worm or great worm when they get access to that.
Okay.
In 3rd edition. So bronze dragon layers tend to have 2 levels. They have a lower level, which is where the entrance is. It tends to be inundated with water. And then a higher level, which remains dry at all times.
So it's like a crocodile lair.
That's where they live. That's where they store their hoard. They really like to hoard things that have a natural beauty, especially pearls and corals.
Ooh, okay.
as well as treasure of military significance. So they like collecting weapons, they like armor, they like books about military strategy and tactics, things of that nature. And they also like to plunder shipwrecks.
Fair.
Which is interesting for a lawful good creature to plunder shipwrecks. I guess it's the thought of, well, they're not using it anymore.
Well, once it's derelict, it's fair game, right?
I guess.
Was it international waters?
Yeah, something like that. And although they are loath to admit it, their preferred treasures are all made of gold, because it doesn't tarnish in the close proximity to salt water.
Gotta say, right now, I much prefer the brass dragon. I think a bronze dragon would be kind of an asshole.
They have that potential. So some bronze dragon ideas. Mercenary captains. I have used this one in a campaign.
Is that with Brianna?
Sorry?
Was that one of the campaigns with Brianna?
Yes, this was my shipwreck campaign.
Okay.
That I don't think you were in that one.
No, I wasn't.
But he was an ancient bronze dragon, and he had a mercenary company, and every 20, 30 years he would get bored and he would fly out to the mainland and look for some people fighting and sell his services. And he prided himself in being an amazing combatant without resorting to his draconic form.
Oh, okay.
He did everything in his humanoid form.
Nice. I like it.
And so his lair, he has this, basically it's a cave in the upper levels of this sort of chalk cliff.
Okay.
With various passageways, and he has a whole tribe of kobolds living in the lower levels of his lair. But the room where his hoard is has a hallucinatory terrain covering this opening that gives him this vista view over the sea.
Okay.
And this entire cave where his hoard is just lined with the banners of all of the mercenary companies he's defeated.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, he's got them all hanging as like tapestries around
that's awesome.
the perimeter.
I love that.
Yeah, he's great. I want to use him again. Anyway, continuing. The captain of a merchant marine ship or the admiral of a merchant marine fleet.
Fair.
Again, because of their propensity towards the sea.
Yeah.
The provost of a military school. You know, they're collecting all of this military knowledge. They're fascinated with military stuff.
Yeah.
They are known to sell their services to nations for military campaigns. Sometimes, depending on how, quote-unquote, just the cause is, they might do it just for a token piece of treasure, or by saying, hey, those guys that you're getting ready to fight have this treasure thing that I want. I will help you if I can have that.
I like that. I think going back to your provost of the military school, I could see this bronze dragon being the provost of the military school because it's the school like centered on a fort, and the dragon owns the fort through shell companies or whatever, but the fort is part of its collection. And so
Absolutely.
It acts as the teacher or the headmaster there because it's his fort.
Yeah. The vice admiral of the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, just as a fun little extra bit, a vigilante a la Batman.
I hate it. I can see it. I hate it.
I mean, yeah, it fits.
Can we punch it?
It fits their mentality.
Can we punch it?
Especially if you have a dark fantasy sort of setting where you're in a very almost lawless, very grimdark sort of evil, quote-unquote, city, and you just have a young adult bronze dragon. They're still up and coming, they're still young, they're still impressionable.
Okay.
They still have their naivete, and they decide that the best way to bring justice and law and order is vigilantism.
You're gonna hate me. King Henry VIII was a brass dragon.
Potentially, yeah.
Again, like the military history, apparently he did some vigilante or wanted to do some vigilante stuff in his youth. Definitely had the girth and the size. Did his own thing, regardless. Like, what he thought was right, he just did. Yeah.
Yeah. Moving along to the next one. Copper Dragons. Copper Dragons, this is one that we have used before.
Yes.
In our adventure, in our one-shot that is in limbo at the moment. Because Hasbro in the Dragon game.
Yeah.
But copper dragons prefer to live in foothills, in rocky terrain, and they also have two breath weapons. They have an acid breath, and they have a slowing breath. In older editions, they also had the ability to spider climb across rocky surfaces.
I love that.
They had access to stone shape, wall of stone, and stone to mud.
You can do so much with that. Just like imagine a stone labyrinth that constantly shifts. But yeah.
Oh yeah. And they continue that into 5th edition by just saying that they use their acid breath.
Yeah.
To basically just melt the channels. And so their layers are these labyrinthine tangle of tunnels.
Right.
They tend to be excellent hosts to all non-evil creatures, and they absolutely love jokes and stories and witticisms. They will extend their hospitality to anyone who appreciates their humor, but they become really irritable with anyone who fails to properly appreciate their humor, or who tells them jokes and stories that they already know.
This is going to be the worst dad joking NPC ever.
Oh, absolutely. They love being the center of attention, and they hate being upstaged. They are absolutely bards.
Yeah.
And they are, by default, chaotic good.
Fair. Like I say, I could get along with a copper dragon. I'm preferring the brass dragon, but I could get along with a copper.
Yeah. So whenever copper dragons get together and start talking, it will almost always devolve into verbal sparring, which ultimately ends up with one dragon basically admitting defeat, leaving and swearing revenge. And while these rivalries are rarely violent, they tend to consist of wars of colorful insults and clever pranks.
I love that. Yeah, it's like two best friends just going back and forth. Like, one guy's going to butter the floor, the other dude's going to saran wrap the dude's toilet. It's going to be stuff like that. Yeah, I love it.
More or less, yeah.
What's that magical ink? Oh, what's the magical ink where whatever you draw becomes real?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So, that ink and just a bunch of phalluses on their face while they're sleeping.
Yeah.
You just sit there. Blah, 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 blah.
So the other colors of dragons that tend to end up layering near a copper dragon are reds and blues. And copper dragons will tend to go out of their way to goad and provoke them, just because they think it's funny.
They totally have little brother energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So they are known to eat almost anything, including metal ores. But their preferred foods are monstrous scorpions and other venomous creatures.
They're spicy.
Well, they claim that the venom sharpens their wits.
Yeah, I mean, like, you get those atomic sour warheads, and you definitely feel alert after one.
Yeah. And so, the things that copper dragons like to collect are mineral treasures. So, not just metals and gems, but they also like stone statues. They love ceramics.
Ooh.
Like, they love these sort of earthenware things.
Okay. I'm thinking those giant, like, amethyst bathtubs.
Yeah, I can absolutely see, like those really intricately carved jade tea sets.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That are carved to the point where they're so thin that it's almost translucent.
Yes.
I can see them having a jade bathtub.
Yeah. Oh, you get like the lapis or the malachite ones. Oh, yeah, just all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I would totally hang out with a copper dragon. I would chill with a copper dragon. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. And so another thing that they love to do is playing pranks on would-be treasure hunters. Especially if they're hunting for something that the copper dragon has in their hoard.
What if there was a mimic, but it was actually a mimic?
So what they'll do is they'll inform the adventurers that, yes, I know exactly where that is. And they will send them on this merry hunt, going all over the place, doing all kinds of crazy, demeaning things, entirely for their own amusement.
I like it.
And if they are entertained enough by the entire process, they'll probably hand the item over at the end.
Fair. I like it.
Because they are good.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. They're kind of jerks, but they're good.
Like I said, I could hang out with a copper dragon. I'd be okay. Prefer the brass, but I could hang out with a copper.
And so a couple of the ideas that I had for copper dragons, one would be the owner of a comedy club.
Yeah.
I can absolutely see them as an owner of a comedy club. In our module, the Copper Dragon, his humanoid form is a gnome, and so he is a cleric to Garl Glittergold.
Nice, yeah.
Another one, just a patron of the arts. One of the things that Copper Dragons are known to do is if they find a bard or someone that they take particular interest in, who is particularly good at telling jokes or telling stories or what have you, they'll basically just collect them for a decade or so. It's like, you live with me now. And eventually they'll get bored with them and let them go on their way. Apparently this is also where a lot of Dragonborn and sorcerers come from.
Makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, I'm assuming that the percentage of Copper Dragon sired sorcerers is very high.
Would make sense.
And then as sort of an off-the-wall sort of idea, the leader of a bandit group, sort of like a Robin Hood character.
Okay.
Because, Robin Hood is frequently placed into that chaotic good alignment on the alignment chart. Because he is robbing the rich to feed the poor, right?
Yeah.
So he is doing the right thing, but he is not adhering to the rules in his attempts to do the right thing.
Okay. I've got 2 real-world examples for Copper Dragons, I think. And again,
Okay.
These would be more system agnostic, but absolutely a nationally syndicated morning drive time DJ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one, Jack Black.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know what his propensity towards metal is, but...
Well, he has a whole song about it.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? I mean, we did the College of Metal Bard based off of Tenacious D, so
exactly.
I guess so, yeah. Okay, yeah. I stepped into that one. All right, moving along. We got 2 left.
All right.
Next one are the Gold Dragons. Gold Dragons are the largest of the metallic dragons. They are considered the most powerful of the metallic dragons. They don't actually have a preferred biome. They just like to be alone.
Fair. Understandable.
And the 2 breath weapons that they have a fire breath and they have a weakening breath.
Ooh.
So going back to 2nd edition, I don't have access to 1st edition, but going back to 2nd edition, they actually had a chlorine gas breath weapon.
Ooh, nice.
So it was a poison gas, just like the Green Dragon.
Okay.
But in 3rd edition, it was changed from that chlorine to a weakening breath. In 3rd edition, it dealt damage to your strength stat.
Oh, damage to stats. That was definitely a 3rd edition thing. That was brutal.
Yeah. So in 5th edition, it has modified to where it imposes disadvantage on all strength-based attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws.
Fair.
And if you didn't like bronze dragons because they were paladins, you're going to hate gold dragons.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of golds.
Because they're
uppity.
more paladin than that.
They're uppity.
Yeah, they have this constant drive towards the pursuit of justice, and they have innate magic to compel others to undertake tasks, whether it is a heroic task for the glory of justice or a rehabilitative task, because you have sinned and now you must seek redemption.
Ew.
So yeah, they have access to Gaius.
Yeah.
Or however you pronounce that.
I think that's correct.
Geese.
Yeah. Could be geese. Ooh.
I think it's...
I want a geese spell.
Peace was never an option.
No.
So, as I mentioned, they tend to lair in isolated locations, but the places where they lair are always surrounded by stone, whether that is a cave or a castle. And they are one of the few that are known for retaining other races as guards, specifically storm and good-aligned cloud giants.
Interesting.
And if they aren't actually guards in their lair, if they just happen to be living nearby, they tend to create this sort of mutual defense pact where, like, hey, if somebody comes to raid my lair while I'm gone, you guys will come and deal with it. And if somebody comes and attacks you in your stronghold, I'll show up and deal with it.
Fair.
And while from 3rd edition onward, gold dragons are depicted as having that manta-style wing pattern, in 2nd edition, they were actually depicted as Asiatic dragons.
Ooh, nice.
as, the sort of sky serpent, kind of the wingless dragons.
I kind of remember that from, what's the old D&D cartoon?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I've never gotten around to watching it. But in the description in the 2nd edition Monster Manual, the stats that are given are for a gold dragon with wings. But it says that they are capable of shapeshifting into a form without them, specifically if they need to for something such as swimming.
Okay.
Because they do have a swim speed. And that they are still capable of flight without their wings, but their speed is halved.
Okay.
And in older editions, they also had the ability to imbue gems with the power of luck.
Nice.
So they were able to hand out luck stones.
I want a luck stone. That sounds great.
Whenever they got old enough, they had the ability of foresight.
Nice.
And they also had the ability to detect gems. So like detect magic.
Detect shinies. Ooh, I want that ability.
Yeah, so in a cone, they could focus on an area. I think it was at 1 round they would detect whether or not there were gems there. 2 rounds determines how many there are. And 3 rounds determines the size and the type and their exact location within the area.
I want that ability. I want to go prospecting.
Yeah. So gold dragons are one... kind of like the blue dragons, they have a worldwide social hierarchy. Or the green dragons, I think. The green dragons had that, where they had a hierarchy that everyone knows where they sit in the hierarchy.
Right.
And there is one leader of the gold dragons that the other gold dragons basically elect. And they will serve as the leader. They refer to them as their resplendents.
That is a title.
That is a title. And they typically do that until either they die or until they reach what's called the twilight, which is where they feel the end coming on, and then they will pass the mantle off to the next person. Or they see someone coming up that they feel is going to be a better leader than them.
Okay.
They will pass the mantle then. And so, going back to the beginning of the episode, where we were talking about Fizban, Fizban has these 7 canaries that fly around with him.
He does.
Those canaries are gold dragons.
They are.
They are great worm gold dragons. They are the bodyguards of a god.
There was a TikTok video that I saw a month or 2 ago, and it was the party goes in and the thief's like, yeah, there's just a shopkeeper I'm still from. What's the shopkeeper? Well, he's got 7 canaries.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That was going between the new player and the veteran player.
Yeah.
And the veteran player's like, I can't metagame. I can't tell him who this is.
Right.
I can't tell him this is a terrible idea. So, when it comes to the treasure that they collect, gold dragons prefer anything that shows artistic skill.
Fair.
So they have very varied hoards. It can be anything from a painting to a piece of blown glass to some intricate lacework to an exceptional suit of armor. Anything along this line of just things that show exceptional skill.
Okay.
Like red dragons, they know whenever anything is removed from their hoard. But unlike red dragons, they don't just have this eidetic memory where they know exactly where everything is. They instead rely on magical wards. So think like the detectors at the front doors of Walmart that go off, that beep whenever you walk out, whenever you forget to demagnetize the one thing in your bag.
You can just stop the beep whenever you walk out. That's fine. We get it. It's okay, Ian.
So a couple of ideas for gold dragons. I was having trouble thinking of gold dragon ideas because they're just so uppity.
They are uppity, but you missed, in my opinion, the perfect one, and I will tell you after yours, because I know who this gold dragon is.
Yeah, so first off would be like a judge or an inquisitor or, sort of that lawbringer type.
Yeah.
Or perhaps someone like a Judge Dredd kind of character.
I can see that, yeah. I am the law.
Exactly. Next one would be like a museum curator.
Absolutely.
Because they have this widely varied hoard, and because they are so social, I wouldn't put it past them to put it up in a museum.
Yeah.
And let people
appreciate
pay their 2 coppers and walk through and gawk at everything that they've collected.
Right.
Especially since they're using these magical wards. I mean,
there's
nothing to say that there isn't something that is going to do like a paralysis ward so that if you try and steal something, you just get frozen in place until somebody comes and gets you.
Yeah.
And then the last one, the most off-the-wall one that I could come up with was a self-help guru.
Would make perfect sense. Again, especially trying to do that whole redemption thing.
And, you know, they're like the wise man on top of the mountain.
Absolutely.
Because they're way out in the middle of nowhere, and you have to make a concerted trek to get to them.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, if they happen to go into this city and they catch you doing something that you're not supposed to, and they put this geas on you and tell you that you got to go and find the gold dragon that lives on top of this mountain.
And you have to carry the stone of remorse on the way up.
And, you know, and then they go through everything because the magic won't allow them to not do it.
Right.
It physically harms you if you resist it.
Yeah, gold dragons suck.
And then you get to the top of the mountain and you see the dude that told you to go there.
Yeah. I'd be so pissed.
Yeah.
So going through reading, especially your early description of the gold dragon, this absolutely is Superman.
Yeah.
Going back with that too, that bronze dragon is probably Batman, and we can totally do a Dragon Justice League.
See here, trying to think, who would be Wonder Woman?
I don't know.
I get the feeling that Wonder Woman would probably be a bronze dragon too.
Yeah.
Because she's from an island, and she has that self-important sense of justice.
Fair.
And, you know, she has the lasso.
Lasso of Truth.
Yeah, the lasso of truth. So, yeah.
And you've got the Flash and Green Lantern, or the other two.
Oh, the Flash is absolutely a copper dragon.
Yeah, I can see that.
And Green Lantern might be brass, might be silver.
Yeah, that could go either way, maybe. I don't know Green Lantern too terribly well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know DC terribly well. So.
But anyway, silvers.
Anyway, talking about silver dragons are the last one we need to talk about.
Woohoo.
They like living in cold places, and for their 2 breath weapons, they have a cold breath, and they have the coolest one, they have a paralysis breath.
That is kind of cool. Frozen.
They really like layering at high elevations, particularly on the peaks of mountains, or literally in the clouds themselves.
Okay.
They can magically condense the clouds to bear weight.
Ooh.
And they make their layers on them.
It's a fluffy cloud bed.
Exactly. But because they like living on the peaks of mountains, that generally brings them into conflict with red dragons. And for the longest time, I was under the impression that silver dragons were small. That silver dragons were among the smallest ones. They're not.
Okay.
They get to the same size as red dragons.
Impressive.
They're almost as big as gold dragons.
Ooh.
Like, in the 3rd edition books, red, gold, and silver dragons are the only ones that have a colossal size.
Okay.
Which, whenever I was talking earlier about how much an adult dragon would weigh, whenever they get to colossal size, apparently it is 1.28 million pounds.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
But we're talking about, I think for a colossal silver dragon, it's like 120 feet from tip to tail and 135-foot wingspan.
So what's the weight of a blue whale? I've got to look this up now. I've got to do some mental math. Hold on.
I want to say about 90,000 pounds. No, that seems way low.
Blue whale, 290 to 330. So we'll just round it, call that 300,000 pounds.
Yeah, 300,000, yeah.
So
okay.
At 1.8, that's 6 times the size of a blue whale?
No, 1.28.
1.28.
So 4.
4 times the size of a blue whale.
It's 4 blue whales.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, have a come.
Dummy thick.
With 4 C's.
Yeah. They even tend to have a similar silhouette to red dragons. There are very small differences, and I don't remember exactly what they are, but in the Draconomicon, they do point out that there's only like 1 or 2 little differences in the silhouette to determine whether the thing over your head,
is friendly or going to burn you to a crisp.
Absolutely.
I love that ambiguity.
And so whenever silver dragons and red dragons actually fight one another, the silver dragons tend to come out on top more often than not.
Well, I mean, with paralysis, yeah.
Well, part of it is because red dragons have a vulnerability to cold.
That also, yeah.
And silver dragons have cold breath, whereas silver dragons do not have vulnerability to fire.
Fair.
So that's a big chunk of it. Another big chunk of it is that silver dragons are willing to accept assistance from non-dragon allies.
Hey, you know what? Good help is wherever you find it. I like it.
They are considered among the most social of the dragons, especially in terms of their interactions with non-dragons. And they seem to prefer living in their humanoid forms. They seem to prefer living in cities with people.
Yeah, it's because you can sit next to a fireplace. You're not freezing your butt off.
They love human food.
Fair.
They love human cuisine,
Okay.
just in general. And they are the only ones that I've found where it specifies that they are capable of sustaining themselves indefinitely on a human-appropriate diet in their humanoid form.
Interesting. I like it.
And this was in 3rd edition where they went into the minutia on everything.
Gotcha. Yeah, Brass Dragon's still best dragon.
And the things that they really like to collect for their hordes are historical documents and artifacts of historical significance.
I would like to visit their horde and peruse, but it's probably going to be too damn cold.
Yeah, probably.
And I'm going to get all lightheaded because it's going to be like way up, like breathing in Denver.
Yeah, it's going to be like on the top of K2.
I'm going to have altitude sickness. I'll sign your book fine.
Like, you have to have oxygen just to get there.
Yeah.
And so they are among the longest lived dragons. They have lifespans that easily surpass 2,000 years. But they frequently catch themselves reminiscing about the past rather than living in the present. Because that is what they like. They like the comfort of knowing what has already happened.
You made a 2,000-year-old dragon with Alzheimer's.
Not Alzheimer's.
Where they kind of like lose that focus of like when things happen, that chronology, and their mind kind of shifts to a past time.
I mean, dementia maybe.
Okay.
But not Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Anyway, some silver dragon ideas that I had. One, because they are good aligned, I think they're neutral good. No, they're lawful good. Okay. One of the things that I would absolutely see silver dragons doing is they are community organizers.
Yeah.
They are the people who are organizing all of the community functions. Whenever some injustice is happening, they're the ones that are organizing the protests.
Okay.
That's their bread and butter. Because that's their way of making sure that they can help the people in and around them that need the help.
I can see that.
Another thing that I can absolutely see them being is archivists.
Yeah, absolutely. With all the historical stuff?
Oh, yes. Genealogists. They do genealogy work.
Yeah.
Just for something to do. And half of what they're doing is them remembering, your great-great-great-grandfather.
You look just like him.
Yeah. And then the last one that I had that I really liked were Sherpas.
Okay.
Because, they are obviously capable of living in that rarefied air without any sort of assistance.
Gotcha. So I'm thinking something along the lines, especially in the summertime, this is like the community person that has the ice cream truck. Because they like human food, they like human cuisine, so like they're sitting there and they're selling the ice cream at cost, if not giving it away. There is no actual refrigeration unit in this truck. It's just their presence is freezing it. And then, they're snacking on their own ice cream too. But they can get around the community. They can see if anybody needs anything. So it also kind of ties into that community organizers. It's their way of keeping an eye on their people as well.
Yeah, we touched on this last time with the White Dragon. We said that the White Dragon was driving the ice cream truck.
Well, the Schwann's truck, the frozen goods.
Yeah, but the White Dragon is driving that creepy ice cream van.
Yes.
Whereas the Silver Dragon is the one that's walking around with a handcart selling gelato.
Yeah, okay. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, that's a good...
Yeah, we have to differentiate between the two.
Well, I was thinking with the White Dragon, I was thinking more of the Swans that sold like the frozen meats that went more door to door.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that
where,
too.
With the Silver Dragon, it would be like just in the community and like, hey, here's ice cream, because it makes people happy when they come by. And then again, if there's any problems, they can see it quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Where the White Dragon's kind of scammy and maybe doing a bit of the milkman thing.
Maybe. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of it. I tried to not do another 90-minute episode, but I think we did another 90-minute episode.
Challenge accepted. Sorry, tons of rabbit trails today.
It's okay. The rabbit trails that we went down were productive.
They were.
We didn't just get off topic and talk about something completely off topic for 40 minutes.
Right. I really do want to try to pencil down some of those ideas about that Dragon Titan War. I think would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas, please send us an email undercommontaste@gmail.com or come and join us on our Discord. You can find a link to the Discord and all of our other social media through our website, undercommontaste.com. You can also find links there to our Patreon, patreon.com/undercommontaste, and to our itch page, undercommontaste.itch.io. A couple of things to bring up before we get too far into the sign out. One, Josh with Lone Colossus Games currently has a Kickstarter that he had just launched as of recording this for Tome of Intangible Treasures Volume 2.
Nice.
We had him on to talk about Volume 1 whenever that Kickstarter launched. It looks great. It looks amazing. Go check it out. Back it if you can. The other thing, the Solo But Not Alone 5 bundle is still ongoing. It's going for about another month. If you haven't gone and gotten your games, go and do that. Last time I checked, they were about $1,500 away from their total goal of $20,000. It's $10 base price for 107 games. There's some really, really good games in here.
Yeah, there's some really good ones.
I haven't looked through the list recently, but I'm pretty sure that Sam Lee's game Death of the Author is in this bundle.
Nice.
And for $10, that just about pays for it for that game alone, in my opinion.
No, I've gone through and I've played a handful of the games from my bundle, and I mean, there's all kinds of different games and different styles, and it's absolutely worth your money. If this is your first time listening to us, we're super happy you found us. You can find our other podcasts on your podcatcher of choice. Just search us under Common Taste. Also, you can join me at 8 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays on twitch.tv/undercommontaste. On Tuesdays, I am playing Darkest Dungeon, and on Thursdays, I am playing the RPG classic Neverwinter Nights.
Probably going to come up with something not dragons for next episode, and then we're going to go into the gem dragons for the episode after that. So stay safe, everyone, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Happy gaming.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Undercommon Taste. Our theme song is Massacre Ann, written and performed by Mary Kroll and used with permission. You can find Mary online at marykroll.bandcamp.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Mary C. Kroll. Our logo is by David Sutherland. You can find more of David's work on deviantart.com/David Sutherland or on instagram.com/Willex_73. We'll be back in 2 weeks, so stay safe, and we'll see you then.